All right, Dr. Steve, can I give just your background real quick?
Absolutely.
So, well, actually, why don't you, if you don't mind?
I am a neurosurgeon, general neurosurgeon out in Long Island, New York. I've known Anthony now for almost 2 years and got interested in trading and really have been very happy with working with Anthony, trying to get up and going. I trade part time. I do full-time neurosurgery. I mainly do spinal surgery, but I do cranial surgery as well. Uh, I work out of about 4 community hospitals out in Long Island, out in Suffolk County, New York. And Anthony asked me to come in and speak to you or answer any questions you may have about the COVID-19. I'm certainly not an expert, but can give you a little perspective from the healthcare side of things.
I think that'd be great because one thing that was interesting is when I talked to you and Dr. Raj, who's also here, you both led off with that. Is I'm a doctor and I'm this, but I'm not the expert on infectious disease and everything else. But I guess what is it you would tell us? Just your knee jerk.
I think in terms of what probably is most, I think current right now is like you asked before about the preparation of the hospitals. I think, um, for example, at our community hospitals around here, you asked are the hospitals prepared. I don't know how Raj feels. I would have to say that the hospitals are not really prepared to the level they probably need to be for certainly a worst case scenario. I think the testing, as you're all aware, is not where it needs to be, and that's not really looking to blame anyone because I don't really think it's really anybody's fault. I think it's just a unexpected crisis that we weren't really prepared for. But you know, the testing is still pretty far behind. For example, at the hospital, I got a memo today from one of our community hospitals that if you want to test for COVID-19, you have to contact the chief medical officer of the hospital to get approval to be tested. I think that's going to be changing very rapidly. I think that the testing sounds like it's going to be fairly widespread pretty quickly. So I think from testing point of view, that's one of the issues. The other issues is just equipment preparedness. The masks, for example, these N95 masks, I think are definitely also, I know for a fact, in very short supply. They're only available for the healthcare workers that are really going to be exposed to patients that could have COVID-19. They're typically used on regular basis for tuberculosis patients, which are really pretty not that commonly found, at least at our hospitals. I think in most hospitals, it's not a common problem. And for whatever other unusual situations where you don't want to be breathing in any virus particles. So, you know, the equipment, the masks, they're in short order. The testing's in short order. The What are we doing? I mean, today, just before I got on, our local hospital stated, as many of the big hospitals. I mean, today on Meet the Press, you know, I believe the CEO of Mass General got on there and said that they're not doing any elective surgeries. Well, our hospitals are doing the same thing. They declared today that there are no more elective surgeries going on. I had to call a patient, talk to them, and you know, tell them that their elective surgery had to be postponed tomorrow, and you know, they'll going to have to triage things on an emergency basis. Other things that I can tell you are just you know, the numbers of ICU beds, the number of hospital beds, I think are a concern. And that's being echoed by the politicians here in our state. You know, Governor Cuomo is saying that uh, that they may wind up having to convert some of the university dorms and facilities into hospitals on a very short-term basis if they need that. I think that that is, again, under worst case scenario. Right now, the numbers here in New York State are 700 positive cases, which is the most in the entire country. There are 4 deaths. There are 4 positive cases in our university hospital, which is Stony Brook University Hospital here in Suffolk County. There are no known cases in any of the community hospitals that I am working out of right now. It's likely that a lot of that's going to change as the testing becomes better and we identify more people. I mean, I think all in all, everyone is. I get the sense I get is that people are really standing up to this, and I think everyone is going to come together, and I think it's going to bring out a lot of good in a lot of people, and I think we're going to get through it in a positive way. Whatever has happened hasn't been ideal, maybe in certain situations, but I think all in all, going forward, I have
It could be. There's time to turn the game around.
Correct.
Good.
Correct.
Hey, one real quick. Is everybody here? I know a couple of people did a sound check. Everybody hears Dr. Steve okay? All right, good. It'd be funny if they all said, no, can't hear a thing. But listen, Doc, this is cool that you come in to, when I asked you to do it, I gave it 90% chance that you were busy or you couldn't do it. And I know you said you're on call, so I feel pretty honored that you'd come in. So thank you a lot because, like I said, I didn't think you'd come in because you couldn't, and you made time. So I thought that's pretty special. The other thing was masks. Is there a chance they could catch up and distribute enough masks in the nick of time?
I don't know enough about the manufacturing side of things regarding the masks. I don't know if there's anybody else in the group that could shed light on that. I really don't have a good answer to that. I would think they would be able to, but okay. I don't know.
All right. Now, and if you guys got questions, by all means, pop them in. I had a good one, and then I had to stop to thank you. I forget now. You're on call. Do you anticipate there would be I don't know how it works with hospitals. Is there like an all hands on deck call where anybody associated with the hospital needs to come and then work out shifts?
There are disaster situations and disaster preparedness, and all the physicians are on that. I've never been through an event that's required that, so I'm not really sure. But I certainly I feel that if there's anything I can do to help in whatever, whether it's neurosurgery or something else, I certainly would be willing to help in whatever way I can.
Carl asks, once you catch us, how long can you expect to have it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's the numbers that I get the sense is probably like runs 2 to 3 weeks possibly, but I guess it depends on the severity of it as well. It might be a matter of a few days.
It depends on what kind of health you're in before you got it, and that's what's pretty. That's what's been pretty consistent.
I mean, my guess is if you have a severe case of it and you're on a ventilator, I mean, you could be looking at, several weeks, maybe months would be my guess.
Now, is that the ultimate kind of avoidance where we want to not run out of those? We don't want to have a situation where, 3 people need ventilators and we got 2. We only got 1. That's when the health system starts to fail and crack.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So masks and those things are important, but it's those important, tools to keep people alive, really.
Yeah, that's the other thing I would put up on your board is the ventilators. I think that I forgot to mention those. Obviously, that's critical.
Is that what they're having in Italy? Do you know of, or have you read?
Yes.
Is that the problem they're having there?
Yes, correct.
All right. And let me ask you one thing. This is my take on it. And one thing I noticed is that experts and doctors and people like yourself, for the right reasons, aren't trying to predict a lot. And and I'm not trying to minimize this by comparing it to trading or this analogy of I can't think about when the guy's going to stop in front of me. I just got to be prepared for it. And so we're not trying to predict how bad, how long, or anything like that. And that's what I kind of get from people like you. But I look at Italy and I look at Spain, and I'm not well read about exactly when they took these draconian measures to really go extreme and shut down. But it seemed like they waited until their hospitals and healthcare systems began to fail. Whereas maybe we're not failing and we're taking these measures of eliminating mass gatherings and shutting restaurants down and schools down. Is there any validity to that?
Yes, I think there is, and I think hopefully we've made it in time, but it's hard to know.
So people got to do their part, and it's no little thing to do whatever it is to make sure you're not a spreader, even if you're healthy.
Right.
And I think people need to understand that. I got elderly parents, so it's like two fronts that I'm guarding, and it's their front is more important than mine because it's they're obviously sitting ducks. And I didn't tell them that, but we locked them down with their caretaker. So that's who I think is at the most risk, right? Elderly and
Yeah, I think based on the information from China and so forth, but I think that's something that is becoming somewhat clear, and I think could be more of a problem here is the younger people that get sick from this, because I think it's the idea that it's isolated to just sick and older people, I think is a little bit misleading. I think that there are probably some very young people that get very, very sick, actually, just based on their immune system. Sometimes a very strong immune system can be a cause for more problems because your body attacks the virus and attacks your own body and so forth, triggers a very severe inflammatory response. And sometimes younger people can have an even more deadly response than elderly people. So it's just a different way to think about it. I think it has to do with the nature of the virus and probably the individual's reaction to the virus, which is probably pretty varied.
so don't minimize it no matter your age.
I don't think you can. Even though in China, I think that the report said that there were very few, if any, under the age of 15. But I mean, I just heard somebody, unrelated to anything medical, just casually mentioning somebody they knew that was in their mid 40s and really went down very, very quickly with this coronavirus and passed away.
The warmer weathers, there's some truth that, like, just with the flu, the reason why the flu season's during the colder weather or the winters because it's colder.
I think it's probably just related to just the groupings of people, but I don't think in and of itself it's probably the only variable.
But will it go down? Transmissions go down with warmer, more humid weather?
I'm not sure. I don't think so, but I'm not sure.
So it's not necessarily like the flu.
No.
Let's see some other good questions. But the other issue is the exponential, just going from 2,000 to 20,000 quick.
Correct.
Cases, right?
Yeah, I was reading something interesting that essentially one person will ultimately transmit it to about 2 other people. So it's sort of like a 1 to 2 exponential in terms of the rate of the infection, how it spreads, which is fairly contagious,
and much more so than the regular common cold or flu.
Yes, yeah.
That's why the early comparisons. Well, we have millions of people that get the flu and tens of thousands of people that die is an unfair comparison.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
All right. Anything else that you'd want to add?
Well, I think in terms of the vaccine development, I don't know a lot about. They're saying that they would be able to do some phase 1 trials by the early spring. I would think that this would take at least 6 to 12 months, but I don't know. Just I'm sure they're doing things as quickly as they possibly can, and whether that vaccine will be useful or not at that point is it's hard to know. It depends on how the virus, I guess, plays itself out. In terms of medications, I think that there was some talk about Remdesivir, which is the Gilead drug. Apparently, the results of that have been kind of questionable. I think they gave it to some of the folks that were very sick up in Washington State on a compassionate basis, I'm told, and really didn't make much of a difference. They still, expired. And the other medication is Kaletra, which is HIV drug, and that's apparently shown some promise in China with the testing there. And then Tamiflu, which is what we use for the regular influenza, it does not work for the coronavirus.
Is this transmitted, Doc, by just good talking and then you emit droplets that way? Or is that like
yes,
just breathing in air?
That's the number one. I mean, it's aerosolized particles from breathing and sneezing, coughing, touching contaminated surfaces and then touching your face.
But just talking to someone, if they happen.
Talking to somebody can spread it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you is there what's your feeling on a turn? What would you look for a turn? Like, all right, we're on this thing, or we're getting on top of this thing.
I think probably the number of cases and the number of deaths, relative to the previous day, the previous week, that would be sort of the previous month.
So it's not something where you got to see it just bend at some point, that curve. And I think they did a good job explaining the peak where even if the same amount of people get it, but spread over time, we'll be okay.
Right. So
we're not there yet. And it might take a couple weeks to know if we're there yet.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of unknowns, right? And so, that's what, I was in fact trying to do this, and we just get more accurate information instead of people freaking out, because that's not going to help. And I think, would it be true that to release the stress on hospitals, obviously getting these drive-throughs up and running ASAP is really important?
Yes, I would.
Would you share with that?
I would agree with that. I think that's going to be helpful in terms of the screening.
And just to give people a sense of efficiency and organization, and you don't have to run somewhere to get screened. You could go and get a peace of mind and whatever, right?
Right.
And then just leave the hospitals to those who honestly or that need it. But do you think it's here to stay? Last question, for several years, or what's your take on it?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I based on all the other viral infections, I guess MERS is still around technically now. I mean, that came out in like 2012, but I think a lot of these pandemics generally subsided over a period of a year to 5 years. So I don't know about forever. I'm not sure it's going to be 1 year or more. It's a good question, but I just don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dr. Steve, I appreciate it. And people have chimed in thanking you as well. So, I'll probably see you in the room when you're around, but stay safe. And, you're one, and I told a couple nurses that we also have, you guys might not realize it, but you guys are on the front line for something like this, and you're not unappreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. And thanks for your time and all you do.
Absolutely. All right. We'll see you maybe tomorrow.
All right. Be well.
You too. Let me stop here a second, the recording, and then Dr. Steve, you could unmute yourself. I'll make sure that I'll disable his talking unless he wants to come back in. Dr. Raj, do you want to add anything? Or there's a question I have for you if you're still around. And in the meantime, I'm going to stop the recording and then start it back up. So then I don't have to go back and edit everything. But give me 1 second because I want to there's a press briefing any minute. Probably won't start it on time, but let's get into that. Let me pause. All right, so to resume what I was going to start with, a couple things, not to be quick, but this press briefing's on, I think, at 4 Central, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it's on about an hour before the open of the Sunday night U.S. markets reopening, okay? I think that they're timing it to say something or whatever, clarify something, give some timestamps as to what's going on with these drive-throughs and everything else. Now, on Friday, when they had that press briefing and showed that they were doing some collaboration with the private sector, they rallied a couple hundred handles. They rallied over 1,200 Dow points, 200 S&P points. It was an amazing rally. Two things. Number one, there were rumors that my buddy Brad was telling me throughout the day that they might eliminate domestic travel when they didn't do that, at least then, and the fact that they showed that, here they are, maybe with a website with all these drive-through capabilities and maybe going to happen right away. And there was a huge relief rally. I don't know, that's why it rallied. There's no question about it, those two things. And more so the fact that they showed movement on the testing failures, so to speak. The other thing is, like I said to Dr. Steve, is in my opinion, you see Italy and Spain react after they started failing. And hopefully, this could happen quick and our healthcare systems could go down pretty fast, as someone in the room here mentioned. But we're not reacting yet to our hospitals failing and having to pick out who gets a ventilator, who gets a bed. And I think that was the case. Is then Italy shut down schools and shut down restaurants and shut down and all that stuff. And it's not their fault. You don't know what you don't know and everything else. But we, as of 4 days ago, we eliminated big mass gatherings with sporting events. We closed the schools on Fridays pretty much across the country. Today, the state of Illinois, the governor said all restaurants except for takeouts are going to be closed. All dine-ins are closed. In Ohio did a curfew, but from what I understood just before I opened the mic, the state of Illinois created a mandatory closing. So, the whole thing is what I said earlier, and what's on this page is your safety is more important than your convenience. The other things, I'm trying to not just create a positive spin, but there's silver linings to everything. And that South Korea turned by having shown some efficiency and some organization, right? China has greatly reduced, if you could believe their numbers, the amount of cases and the fact that they're stunting the curve, as that Dr. Fauci had said. Of course, his first name is Anthony and he's Italian. But they're trying to make things, if you think about this, it's the same thing with trading. And it's like the simplicity is the most important thing. The hygiene, the closing of a lot of dense areas, church gatherings, and then sporting events. Personally, and this is just my opinion, I don't think the NBA and the NHL and the NCAA took it upon themselves to close. I think that they were told, listen, you need to do this or we're going to make you do it. And then they rolled it out. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. And it's irrelevant at this point. But I think that I said in a quote in the email is maybe we're freaking out just in the nick of time. And instead of using the word freaking out, but maybe we're taking it serious just in the nick of time. That's, I think, where we're all at. But don't minimize. It's okay if you minimized it 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago. I did, right? I didn't laugh it off, but I'm thinking, what's the big deal here? That didn't mean that we told anybody buy dips. Never did that. We wouldn't do that or get bullish for any other reason. In fact, you'd stay bearish more often and trade the reaction and as things come in. But it's okay to change and turn and not be stubborn to the aloof. See, we overreacted, and wanting to be right is crazy. We can replace lost revenues. You can't replace lost life. So that's what people, I think, you have to understand. We have, I'm listening as I'm talking, but this press briefing is something that we should listen to because it's not coincidentally coming out an hour or so before the U.S. markets open up. And do we have an indication where they're going to open? Probably. Now they closed. Let me show this chart really quick. I wanted to keep these recordings just to the people that we had on here. The Fed, here, let me pull that up. Thanks, Chris. But you could see this here. The Fed just cut 100. Wait, what did they cut? They cut it 150 basis points instead of waiting till Wednesday. And ready to use full range of tools to support credit. Voted 9-1. You see this in the bottom right of my screen share. Happening before the markets open up. Not 100 basis points, 150 basis points on top of the 50 they cut a week ago. In fact, that was one of the things I wanted to show was the Fed fund tool. So beyond going to zero, what do? There was a 68% chance they were going to do this on this Fed fund tool that I've shown a million times, as you guys could see it here, that they were going to go to essentially flat to a quarter point. And that's exactly where they're at. Right at the top of the hour, they did that. Not a point and a half on top of, I've never in my 25 years seen them go, I don't even think a point in one meeting, let alone a point and a half. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen them go a point. I can't remember, but I definitely never seen them go a point and a half in 25 years following the Fed. The coordinated rate cuts with other central banks hasn't happened, but I don't think that matters. I think they're all doing the same thing. The only place to go from here is reintroducing QE and these ready-to-use full range of tools to support credit is where they go from there. But they're not screwing around. They're not waiting. And I think you got to remember, they don't want to happen in what's happened in Italy and Spain to happen here. Is it too late? Well, we could sit around and worry about that, or we could get on top of it and not panic. And these are all financial tools. So it's short-term stuff for sure. And as I'm talking, I'm listening and reading your guys' comments. I'm trying to do three things at once. Dr. Raj, can I open your mic? If you got a mic. Let's read this here. Comments. Let me pull it up on my other site. Raj, could you hear me? Let me go to my Trade the News here and read this. In fact, let me just bring it down and show you guys this on the. So right down in here, we'll use tools to act appropriately to support the economy. Oh, wait, let me open your mic first, Doc. I just want to make sure you're okay talking. All right, let me get to you. The only thing is that when they start talking, And I don't mean to interrupt you when you're talking, but there it goes. Now you got to unmute your mic. Dr. Raj, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can, Doc. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for doing this. Could you tell everybody, I guess, your background real quick?
Yeah, so I'm an orthopedic trauma surgeon. I'm 66 years old, getting ready to retire, and I've been with Anthony for a little bit more than 2 years now, right? Yeah, 2017. So I'm in Northeast, I'm in Bangor, it's a small state population-wise, and I'm in a tertiary care center, and we get patients from more than 3/4 of the state. They all come, referred patients to our institution. So that's my background.
Could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What Dr. Stevens said, how do you feel that the hospitals that you're affiliated with, are they prepared?
So I think that's the interesting thing. This morning when I got your email, it was quite different. So we had issue because the schools closed. So when the schools closed, then a lot of the staff people have the kids and they cannot arrange for babysitters, so they have to take time off. So this morning, our main concern was that we will not have enough staff to run the operating rooms. So we may have to cancel some elective surgeries. And around 3:30, I got the email from our orthopedic group and our trauma group saying that that was the decision that they made, but they are also going to enforce now the precautions based on the recommendation of the CDC, that they are going to close the hospital to outside patients coming in. Those who enter the hospital as visitors, they're going to restrict the visitors, they're going to screen the visitors now and limit the access to the hospital. Plus now they're saying that this is, it's a little bit of a bad news that I heard, and I don't know if it is true or not, that in Seattle, 33% of the ER physicians and the ER staff have been exposed to the virus, and they are on self-isolation. So that created issues where they don't have enough ER docs and staff to run the ER, and the recommendation in our institution is if that happens, then some of the orthopedic surgeons and some of the other specialists may be called on to go and offer their services in the ER. So that's
Is that what you might be called to do if that were to happen in
yeah.
Bangor?
I mean, I'm the orthopedic trauma guy. So our patients, the emergency surgeries are not going to be stopped. So we are going to continue to do the surgeries, but the elective cases are going to be canceled and they will not be rescheduled for, they're saying, about 6 weeks. So this is just in the last three or 4 hours that this has happened. And I think as far as I'm aware, there are not, there's only one case that was home tested and sent home for isolation. I'm not aware of any other cases in Maine. However, the story in Boston is quite different because they have some significant increase in numbers. So maybe we are so close to Boston and there's a lot of people coming from Boston to here would be the reason why we are being so aggressive.
Have you ever seen in your career anything like this with the level of alert?
No, not in this country, but in my background, I was in medical school in India. We were, on a smallpox eradication program. So I worked on going to all these villages, trying to get people immunized and, stop them from, spreading the, smallpox. So I was, from that point, this is quite different. But in this country, since I've been here, no, I haven't had any such experience.
Do you think everything being done though is giving us the best chance to jump on top of it? And
I mean, in hindsight, of course, it's perfect. But I think initial response from China was to try to minimize it, and not let it affect their business. We also went through the same thing. We didn't want to create panic in this country, try to not minimize, create the worst situation we have created now, which is total panic. But I guess after Italy's, I think the Italy's where the most of the difficulties came from, because they ran out of, there was so much overcapacity. I mean, oversupply of the patients that they couldn't handle, and that's what basically brought everybody to sort of, oh my God, this can happen. And in my hospital, obviously, we have almost like 100% capacity to just run the normal business. That means because we are a tertiary center, we have lack of beds. We
Right.
have come somebody who has broken hip that is sitting in the outlying hospital to bring them in for surgery. We have challenges to, get them in the hospital. And if we get, sudden, outbreak of people needing ventilators, we are going to be in trouble.
If there's an outbreak of
Yeah, if there's
heavy
outbreak
demand
of heavy
initially.
demand in this. And we have a lot of older population also
Sure.
in Maine. So that is a big challenge. And I guess that's why we are even though we have no cases here, we have become very aggressive in terms of trying to get ahead of the curve.
Do you, is it true kind of to think of the system, even though this is unprecedented, there's a switch where they flipped it and said, all right, here's what we have to do when we get hit. And there's offsite facilities that you start using. Is that somewhat organized?
No, I don't think we have gotten that far. I think just canceling the elective surgeries and not rescheduling anything for 6 weeks is such a major decision, financially and for everything else. I mean, the hospital, it's not an easy decision to make, but the fact that they did that, plus also they are stopping all the meetings. Like tomorrow morning, we have a meeting of Department of Orthopedics, and they are going to be trying to do that on Skype instead of getting people. So
Yeah.
take these kind of measures, I think means we are, serious, and we are, trying to do whatever we can to mitigate it so it doesn't get out of hand. And like I said, as far as I'm aware, there are no cases in Maine that have been in the hospital so far.
That have been in the hospital, even though
Yeah.
there's been some.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that they have drive-throughs, and I said it with Dr. Steve. I think, I don't know, for me, when he had that press conference on Friday, I was actually feeling more comfortable, thinking, all right, I don't want the government taking everything over anyways. I'd rather be efficient and have this kind of like, hey, listen, we have resources. If we're organized, we could have parking lots, and duplicate South Korea to show that, hey, we got this, and we'll get on the other side of it. But there's that lack of, you don't have to run to get a test. You could log on, get an appointment, maybe drive through, get your result in a day or an hour, whatever. But again, there's no stigma, some sort of stigma. Oh, I got this, you know what I mean? Like you would with so many other things. And that I think people would already have if they got diagnosed with it. Like, ooh, you got it, and you become a zombie. And I don't think people should think like that. And I think when we turn and you start to see the people, even like a Tom Hanks, here, this press conference is starting, Doc. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I appreciate a ton that you and Dr. Steve come in here. I really appreciate it. And stay safe. Would you please?
Okay, you too. You be careful.
I will. Everything else take care of itself, but I think there's silver linings with it. But just be careful, and we appreciate what you do.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I'm gonna listen and I'm gonna mute you, Dr. Raj. You don't have to do it. All right. So a lot of the early stuff is gonna be just political talk. I'm going to pause the recording and then kick it back on when I come on. If you don't hear me talk, that doesn't mean I went away. I'm just listening. As I say all the time, when volatility spikes, obviously you have no choice. Risk is going to spike with it. And so it's even more important to know where you're getting out before you get in. Understand that the flyer you can't try to catch. When you catch a big winner and you think you could hold on to it forever, it could come back very quickly. This is on the up or downside. Now, all the years I've been trading, I've never seen a 150 basis point cut, especially coming after 50 a week and a half ago. So this is uncharted territory. And the worst thing that stock markets, hold on, the stock markets hate the most is what? Uncertainty. How much more of it do you want? I think silver lining is South Korea turning, doing what they did. Could you trust their numbers? Yes. You really can't with China, but they seem like their stuff's coming back online. You got to watch Italy and Spain to see if they could turn, if they could see any kind of blunt in their situation. And then just like they're saying, it's going to spike, especially more tests, more people are going to have it. And the stigmatization of who has it and this whole, if that becomes an issue, then gets people hunkered down, and then we're going to react to that. It's going to be really important what the stock market does because it can't hold on to any kind of rally. You see one-day rallies gone. And so as far as like people asking me, no idea. Honestly, I have no idea. If they open up 100 higher or 100 lower, I'm not going to be surprised. And neither could you. There is no expert to this, even for people that have traded through such crises before. Just don't Monday morning quarterback during the trade or during a trade. And like I said in an email, you shouldn't be a Democrat or Republican, but you should be an American, and you should do the right thing and be smart and be safe and be responsible and don't act like an idiot. As far as trading goes, you don't look for flyers. Let the market show some stability. It'll go a long way showing the American people some stability and the rest of the world some stability. I think that these drive-throughs, they could go and move, and some semblance of order goes a long way. A turn in countries that have been overwhelmed, Italy, Spain, is important. State of Washington, right, where it's hit the worst first. But there's two extremes, the happy talk and then the gloom and doomers. Stay away from the gloom and doomers. You bet on the end of the world it comes once and you won't be around to collect. Now we closed the June contract 52 3/4, 26.5275 Friday after a rally up to 26 like 90 during the press conference announcing the collaboration with private industry, CVS, Walgreens, Target, and everything else. They're open up about, well, pretty much unchanged, relatively speaking, what it looks like now, 42, 45, really thin. Let me move this. Now remember, the bonds catch a big bid with that big rate cut. We're going to open up 40 lower, 50 lower, 2,600 even. Remember, we closed around 52. It'd have got a bounce if that 150 came during the trade, probably, but the uncertainty is a killer. You can't get caught long. There's going to be some wicked ass turns here. Now we're 100 lower. 5% lower, expect it.
And the equity futures, the S&P 500 futures are down by
26,
3% in early
3% already. 26, 52, 75. That's where they opened, or I mean closed on Friday. Where's the open? I don't know where officially the open is, but you guys could see this thing is a lot of people's machines aren't probably keeping up, but right now it's about 3-4 handles wide, back up to 08. Mine's keeping up. 6 quarters last. Like I said, you could see this big move lower. They'll come back, crack them again, rally them back. If you think that you're going to hold on to nice winners forever, you better be good at scaling. And then you got to have the most important thing is ASAP. You need trades to go your way ASAP, or you can get yourself in trouble. And a big part of that is knowing how you're going to get out before you get in. And you better not trade price. You better trade areas, and they better be wide. And if you haven't made money trading normal situations, don't think this is going to be your success story. You're going to get smoked. Just be careful. I think we'll be limit down before dinner too, Carl. I think I'm not so won't be surprised anything that happens. And I think limit down is what? Anybody have a number? 5% from 26.52. 25. Thanks, Tom. 25, 55, 50. 25, 55, 50. Are you sure? I thought it'd be lower than that. We got 32, 26, 32 is the open. We came to 60. Thanks, Raj. We got 25, 55 half. And we got to 64 3/4 so far, the session low. And they came back up here. I'll just show the NASDAQ, and they came back and cracked it. You will have moments where you shake the shit out of shorts, guys. I'm telling you, you'll have short shakeouts and squeezes, huge squeeze on Friday. But people should have anticipated, well, okay, what is going to make this thing turn? Right now, the uncertainty, it's difficult to get footing. The Fed already did its 150. They're going to have to come up with something creative. And you could do all that stuff financially, and that's great. But when people aren't comfortable, here we go, then you get the other side. You got to come out the other side. They shut down restaurants in Illinois. Thanks, David. That's not 15 minutes. That's till tomorrow's open. I don't think that they let it go. They don't reopen in 15. That's only during the day session. You guys could correct me if I'm wrong. They're trying to bounce and stay away from this limit down, but they're going to have trouble. If your system's locking up, freezing up, even more reason to not get stuck in a position, especially if it's LONG, because you get lock limit down, then you're in the real unknown. So you got a 230 lot they're going to take out here at even. They took it out and broke them. My data's keeping up. I got CQG. Has to do with data, has to do with your PC.
comments out of the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. Governor Moore was by the New Zealand Central Bank to cut its official cash rate by 75 basis points.
They went up, filled that 200 lot at even, and come right back to the lows. If they could get back through, man, I don't want to tell people to get long, but they got, look at this. Those evens traded, they can get back through even, they'll go, but they're going to have to lock them. Should be in the June. Now remember, it's not only this, you know what's hitting the fan, it's overnight, right? We're not open. This is an overnight market, so it's thinner. See that big order coming in, 200 lot? He's going to walk it up. He's real. Until they fill him, then they go through him. Micros and the ES, the full are moving right together. They look the same, to be honest with you. I pulled up the micros and they're depth-wise, they look the same. So remember two things, the uncertainty we have, but also the it's overnight. Everybody should be in the June contract.
Follow-up comments from the Reserve Bank of New Zealand Governor Orr stating quantitative easing would be most effective tool for more stimulus. After he earlier noted that the RBN is not considering.
You know, when you're getting all this, stimulus, you're getting all this promise of all kinds of liquidity, and you can't hold a bid. You're just setting yourself up for a giant sweep, but the sweeps are minimized to the lock limit, right? Then I encourage you to watch the SPY to see where they're going to reopen.
Reserve Bank of New Zealand governor noting that not all retail banks.
Let me pull this 24p up. It's hard to follow the bonds opposite because the bonds caught this big bid with that huge rate cut. Take a look at this 24 PNF of the S&Ps. That takes us, this looks like a 4 PNF. That takes us back to where we just opened, right? Well, I'm sorry, this is actually from Friday. They sold it right into the close after this huge rally. But they open up, and you could see the unbelievable amount of sell stops underneath here, but they go right to lock limit at 55.5. That's the problem. But through 64, again, they probably lock them up. On the other side, it's these evens to 05. If you're not in 5 to 10 point areas that you're looking at and trading, and that's too risky, then you shouldn't put anything on. Can't trade a tick or a point. You got to look at like 5 to 10. Then you always got the micro option. Man, they're making it really difficult for follow through either way. There's this 100 lot, 75.
Treasury futures, the T-bond futures continuing to move higher following the emergency rate cut.
Again, the micros look like the minis. Although the big orders I'm telling you about are in the minis. 15 points from this limit down. You got about 4 1/3%. Everything's down 3.5 to 5%. They're ready to smash this thing and just stick on the lock limit.
Currency market is amid the easing measures by the U.S. Fed. Dollar yen.
You can't just where's this thing at? All these swing lows. They jump from here. I'll be shocked. I'm not getting short. I'm not getting long here, but I just all these swing lows here. Boom, 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 boom. hey, you get this thing to rally, you're a hero, but too many swing lows to not be on the edge of a cliff and go to 55 half. Did it, Dave? Not only is it thin, guys, but you're seeing the spread in the bid offer. Sometimes a half a point to a point wide, sometimes two when it turns. The problem is if you get stuck long on a limit down, you're at the mercy of somebody else. I'll answer this question in a second. Hold on a second after we lock limit here.
4% NASDAQ futures down 3.9%, and that's reminded the downside limit down during electronic trading.
I thought it was below 55 half. A couple of guys said 25, 55 half. Is that what we got? Yeah, that seems about right because they're down 4.5. Right now at 70. Thanks, Peter. Now remember, there's only opportunity. You got to let things get some structure, which it's tough to do when you just reopen. And you'll get that as we go along. Do we come off limit? We gap open like last Monday, back lower because the SPYs were 7% lower. So it went from 5 to 7 right away. Here's this lock. But you have to, all of this is uncharted territory. As the news comes and as it gets worse quick, just like the cases are going to spike, and here's this lock limit, just like the cases are going to spike, the information and the way this thing moves is going to turn. So now here's my take on a couple things. I didn't get a sense of, I'm not putting words in their mouth, but I didn't get a sense of confidence that the healthcare system is, all systems go, ready to handle anything. I think they're all going to start looking at each other and saying, now what? Maybe it doesn't get to that. The other thing is when I'm asked trading 2007 and 2008, can we go down 50% like we did in that crisis? The thing with the two is that there's not even close what I felt was the financial crisis and long-term effects, not short-term, because it's pretty bad when you just pretty much shut everything down. But the long-term effects were much more dire when it was close to just an economic collapse, had they not done some things and bailed out some people or some companies. But the dimension that this has that didn't was the fear of life factor, right? So you could lose your home, but not your, well, here everybody's looking at each other. And we gotta get past that. You gotta find that turn of confidence that, wait a second, this isn't a 50% lethal epidemic. It's bad, but they turned in a couple countries that I think you could trust. In South Korea, I can't say China turned, I don't know. But I think we can't say South Korea did some things that worked, but then there's some others that have to turn as well. Did we stunt this before it got to a certain point that other countries didn't? I don't know. Nobody does. I think they say you're not going to know for weeks, or I think that within the next week, you got to pay attention to how many people that you know get it. But again, it's something that's got to wash through, and they're just trying to get most people that get it strung out and not to peak like this. It could peak, but not like that. And I thought the best chart was when they had like this line where anything above this dotted line was stressing out the healthcare system. And so they try to get the same amount of people over a longer period of time. So it might just do that. You still have the same number of people getting sick, but just stringing it out. And so not everybody goes to dinner at 5 o'clock. But people can't panic.
And the currency markets amid the weakness being seen in the New Zealand dollar, the Aussie is just off session lows, down about 0.6% for the Australian dollar, 61.42 on.
So if you take a look at this, you're down 128 points. You're down 1,000 points in the Dow. You give back half of Friday's gain, boom, in 30 minutes or so. There is no back-to-back stability, and until you get that, you're not getting that confidence in this market. You need some structure to lean on so that being long isn't like a deer in headlights, because then you're not long for long, and that turns into quick selling, and then back down we go, because there's more justification to sell than there is to buy, and certainly confidence to buy and hold. There is none. There'll be one of the wildest weeks, wildest months ahead. And there's a ton of opportunity if you manage your risk like crazy. I put that in the email. Doesn't matter what you make, it matters what you don't lose. Just build on the process, the trade, not the flyer. There was tremendous amount of opportunity on Friday late because it just followed through, and for good fundamental reasons. But you got to anticipate that. So hold on a second. Some of the things I was going to talk about was anticipating what the Fed was going to do, and they already did it minutes after we came on with their 150, and you could see what it didn't do to the market, right? Unprecedented cut. Again, doesn't matter until we can get the health issue out of the way. Then they'll worry about the financial issue. Health issue, financial issue. let's bring Kenny. Are you here? I'm going to bring in Kenny to talk about the airlines real quick. Kenny, where are you at? I'm going to find you here. There he is. You got to unmute your mic and I'll introduce you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hold on, Kenny. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Thanks, Todd. All right. So, Captain Kenny, how are you?
Yes, sir. I'm good. How are you?
There's two things that's impressive about Kenny. Number one, that you don't know what I'm going to say. No, but first that he's a captain of Delta Airlines, but you also flew F-15s?
F-18, so the Navy jet. Yeah. It's okay.
All right. Tells you what I know.
That's all right.
I have trouble spelling F.
By the way, my wife is not impressed that I'm a captain.
No, that's I am, but
That's for say.
I think it's cool. Some of the thing. Well, it's obviously we talked about flying at night on an aircraft carrier. One of the scariest things that a person could do, landing it.
It's probably the highest my blood pressure's ever been, other than being ill. Yes.
Every time you had to do it.
Yes, every time.
And how many times did you say you did it?
At night, 49. I can count those exactly. I remember just about every one of them.
49 times you landed on an aircraft carrier at night, or just?
That's correct. That's correct.
And because during the day is obviously a lot easier.
Oh yeah, once you get about 50 or 60 under your belt during the daytime, it becomes more fun then.
During the day, but then at night, it's when you say dark is dark. You can't see.
Right.
Anything.
Well, the problem is most people think the aircraft carrier is lit up like a cruise ship, and it's not. It's literally just a light out there in the middle of a black velvet canvas. So you're pretty much focused on your instruments as you come down, and then as you get in closer, you can see the landing area, and then what they call the ball, the lens, which is gives us our angle to come down on, and so that's your visual, which is it's very minimal. To be honest with you. So mostly my grades were the highest at night, probably because I was most focused at night. But you're primarily focused on your instruments at night.
Well, let me ask you something now, and I'm bringing Kenny in because at Delta, was this the most drastic changes you ever seen?
Yeah, so far. I mean, we've gone from our company made over $6 billion last year, and we just announced that we're cutting 40% of our flying. After the president announced a 30-day ban over in Europe, a couple of days later, our CEO came forward and said we're going to cut 40% and park up to 300 aircraft. We have just about 900 aircraft at Delta. So we're going to park almost a third of the fleet and cut 40% of the flying.
Wow. And so how about jobs and stuff?
Right now, that's the unknown. I mean, it's very fluid, obviously, as time goes on. But if it continues past about the 3 or 4 months that he is anticipating, then we'll have to probably start furloughing people for sure. We're already cutting contract people. Contract people are going to be cut, and they're all throughout the company, the training and under the wing or above the wing, different areas throughout. He's already cut those. So he's being very aggressive. It's the most aggressive I've ever seen it happen at the airlines. I've been there 22 years, and this is by far the most aggressive, even after 9/11. Go ahead.
So, no, that's fine. And then Does that affect you? It'll cut down on your flying time?
Yeah, it'll probably cut my flying time. They're talking about cutting back flying time individually. It's probably going to be a 15 to 30% cut in my flying time. So 15 to 30% cut in pay because we get paid hourly or actually by the minute. So, anytime we don't fly, we don't get paid.
So the combination of, all right, so there's some background on what the airlines have done, and I would imagine, did most carriers do that?
Yes, it's following through. I mean, we're probably one of the top carriers in America right now, for sure, maybe the world. So it's going to carry forward through everyone, all the top carriers in the U.S. for sure.
Now, you look at something like this, how do you compare it fear factor wise? You've seen how it's taken draconian measures with your own company. You've landed planes on an aircraft carrier. There's a lot of people that are afraid.
I understand that. But like I had a gentleman ask me once, I've been studying trading for 25 years, and I was actually working for a guy. I was out, because I've gone through a lot of things, Anthony. I've had a brain tumor. It was benign, so it wasn't a big deal, but it put me down for about 2 years, and I went through that, and I went through another issue with a medical issue, which knocked me out of flying for 5 years and back to flying. So I had a gentleman ask me once when I was trading in this office. He came in, he goes, "So let me ask you something, Kenny." He goes, "What's harder, trading or flying an airplane aircraft carrier?" I said, "Well," I said, "they're both difficult. I guess the difference would be, I don't guess I could die trading if I missed a trade. So, but if I didn't miss the landing on an aircraft carrier, obviously I could die pretty quickly." So fear wise, I guess, Anthony, I'm 61 years old. I've been through enough in my life that my grandmother once told me, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about itself. So I've taken that, and I really don't worry about it because I can't worry about it. I just take it a day at a time and take it at the moment, do the best job I can, whatever I'm doing. Flying next week, all 5 days, from New York all the way to the West Coast out to Orange County. So, and I checked my flight loads were less than 50%. So we're going to start cutting back off those, I'm sure, but I don't worry about it. I try to protect the people in the back the best I can. I've got a lot of people throughout. I've got maintenance people. I've got ground personnel. I got flight attendants. I got gate agents. I've been talking to them, and of course they're all worried, but it's my job to just do the best I can to be as focused as I can and try to create as best an environment as I can for the passengers and the flight attendants and our crew. So you can't worry about it. It's going to worry about itself.
No, that's well put. You just got to take care of what you need to do and what people have to do and understand that there's going to be.
You know what? I do have a friend of mine. Actually, he's a first officer at Delta, a good friend of mine. He thinks he has the virus. Just talked to him, and he's a single guy. He actually lives in a boat. He's based in New York. He used to live in Flushing Bay on his boat. And since the wintertime, he's moved out. He's moved his boat out. I think he lives in one of the places on the Jersey Shore area. But he said he's the doctor. He did not go in. They told him not to come in to be diagnosed because they don't want, if he does have it, they don't want him to carry it, to the people he's going to meet along the way, and also into the testing center. So they told him just to stay where he is until symptoms start to subside. Once they subside, give it 72 hours, and he's back to normal.
That's what I think people have to hear and see is the turn of people getting healthy, and it's not
right
a stigma to get it and to have it, or to look at people that have it. Ooh, I mean, yeah, you want to keep your distance, and it's important to know if you got it so you can be responsible. And but everybody's got to remember this: if people are prone to be gloom and doom, they're going to be gloom and doom. If they're prone to be worrywarts, they're going to be worrywarts. If they're prone to be, positive people and leaders, they'll be positive people and leaders. So everyone's going to follow their path of where they want to go. And it's important not to listen and get caught up in it. Social media is a different dynamic that wasn't really as prevalent in the other pandemics or close to pandemics, even Ebola 5 years ago, but let alone H1N1. And I know there's faulty compare contrasts to all of these previous ones on different levels, but social media take things to another level. They just want to make sure that they blunt the amount of how fast people get it. Let it wash through, and then we'll pick up the pieces. The markets have trouble trading property damage as the hurricane's still swirling above us. That's the best metaphor I could give people. That's why there's no any kind of structure or continued upside or bounces that have any meaning, because hold on, I got to turn this guy down. Powell's talking. It's having a profound effect on people in the United States. This is, I doubt he pulls this off limit, but he's on the horn here. So getting back on what I was talking about, you have to, hold on, I'm listening to Powell. He's going to try to say all the right things. You've got all these other central banks doing everything that they could do as the sun rises on their markets. It's Australia, and then you're going to see all these markets, again, might lead our way to show us further downside or any kind of bounce. Do not get yourself surprised by anything. So your approach to fear, does it always, can it compare to, the most fear you would have in the 49 times you landed?
Right.
You always revert. That's your default.
I would say that's probably my default. The whole training process going through Navy training was I wouldn't say fearful. It's very challenging. I don't know that landing on a boat at night, I don't think I ever had fear. It was more of a, I don't know, heightened challenge, I guess the way to put it. I was never fearful. I don't mean to say that, in a way of being pompous or anything like that. I didn't have time to be fearful. I had a job to do. I was just focused on it. So it's like now I have a job to do and I'm focused on it. I go out and I'll do it. So, and my responsibility is, if I happen to find that I get symptoms, I'll put myself somewhere out of the way from everyone and go through the symptoms and, protect the older people. I think that's where it seems like most of the issues are coming from, is the older group. And then that with the flu anyway, with most strains.
Well, yeah, they're always going to be at higher risk. I think that's well said. What you mentioned, where it wasn't fear, it was challenge.
Right.
So you got to get yourself. And I also like how you pull trading in. What's tougher? Well, you're going to die from getting short, getting long, but you can if you come up short.
Right.
Right landing.
I mean, either way can change your life. Sometimes one of them can be more permanent than the other.
So Omar mentions from Spain, he said people actually need more fear out there. They're trying to avoid the real problem. He says there's incompetence of the government not being strict. He says we must be more strict. He's talking about in Spain. Like, didn't they finally close everything down, Omar? Like I said, you need some structure. You need some organized. When you seen South Korea, did you see those guys in those suits giving the tests through the windows, through the thing, and it seemed orderly, and maybe it wasn't, but looked like it was? That's what has to happen here. within the week.
Some financial markets have shown signs of stress.
And in the meantime, have a bourbon and Coke or your choice of beverage. I'm sorry, is that wrong?
No, you're right. And people, like I said, you can't. You trade the gloom and doom. You don't feel the gloom and doom. So you
Right.
trade it. You don't feel it. If you're gloom and doom, that's fine. Trade it, but don't act it. Be responsible.
Just
React.
be responsible, right?
That's it. Be proactive. Be proactive. Have plan B and C. And I think that what Omar said was kind of what I would think is that there's not. Here's something else that I'll tell you guys is I went to pick my daughter up at probably their last visit to a friend's house for a week, but their schools have closed. Anyways, I go pick her up at her friend's house at about 8 or 9 o'clock, and I expected to drive and have it look like a ghost town, right? And it wasn't. Looked normal. I still didn't think people were taking it serious, or at least saying, you know what, maybe I'll stay home. You don't have to go too far to an extreme, but just lay low. You don't have to clear the shelves, and you don't have to be an absolute hermit, but you got to lay low. And if you don't absolutely have to go somewhere, you don't. Now, you know, you could still order out and things like that without going to restaurants. But I don't think what he said about the Spanish, I think that might be true. If they didn't take it serious and weren't strict soon enough, they're stressing their healthcare systems. He says on Saturday, or since Saturday, on Friday, the government announced the emergency state, and people started to be in a panic mode, moving from side to side of the country, contributing to the spread of the virus. You know what I think you'd call it, Kenny, is a controlled panic or be anxiously calm. You know, kind of
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
an oxymoron. You know what? You got to lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. Right? That's an old saying.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I ain't talking to the guys with the hair on fire. So I wanted to cut. Well, listen, Captain, thanks for coming and sharing, Ken. You're a good guy, and
Pleasure.
glad to know you.
Thank you for doing this.
No, this is nothing. This is cool. And the Dr. Steve, Dr. Raj are good guys, and but there's different dimensions and expertise, and just knowing someone, you know, that's done what you've done and do what you do gives us a dimension on, you know, where these companies have gone, and we're hearing it from the horse's mouth. It's different than reading it online. So appreciate it, man.
You're welcome.
See you tomorrow.
And remember, if you can't think of anything else, bourbon and Coke. So
Perfect.
thanks a lot, buddy.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take your sound off. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of analysis going on because we open up a lot lower and go a lot more lower. And then these circuit breakers are in effect for a reason. So I think we hit every circuit. There's a chance we hit every circuit. Now that I've seen what has happened on the open, they don't budge, even attempt to rally. If they can't, and they're just not getting anything out of Italy and Spain, and those numbers come in worse as far as the deaths, and they're just double and triple, you're going to get these circuit breakers to really get tested, and they'll halt trading. But I think it's important for people to have perspective. I think, though, that there needs to be, like on a trading floor before electronic trading, organized chaos. You look at the floor and think, what the hell's going on here? What kind of business is being done? And yet it got done, and it washed through and settled at the end of each day. Now, another question, closing markets. I know that it's been talked about. Well, the 9/11 they weren't open when it happened, and they just kept them closed for a week. I don't know. I don't know what they do, to be honest with you, and what they recommend. They don't want to create panic if these melt away, but they also want to make sure there's stability. And I think that they're throwing everything. I think someone said something last week, a guy that I respected, was they got to throw the kitchen sink at this. And they're doing that, right? They're doing that Fed-wise. They have to talk about things to anticipate for a rally. Unless, and you don't get these things, every rally is to be sold, and you cannot get yourself comfortable long. But you got to look and anticipate for something like a TARP that was done that didn't immediately turn markets, but did have an effect and surprise, and something that was, again, that really pumped a lot of confidence. The difference, and I can't stress this enough, is that this isn't just a housing crisis. It's a health crisis. That dimension scares people more than the housing. The difference, however, here's the other flip side. You'll turn quicker in the health scare to get more confident and exhale than you did in the housing. Housing crisis had that long, prolonged pain. So many people lost their houses and everything. So then you had to get over it. Whereas this, there'll be an exhale moment.
Fed's Powell is noting that forward guidance and asset purchases are Fed's basic toolkit.
7,700 big ones. Now they used to be called the big one. Now the minis are the big ones, but they're 7,700 offered at 25.55, half 5% down. Unless I'm wrong, correct me if I am. They remained 5% lock limit entire overnight session, only to reopen and allowed to go another 2%. And then they hold them for 15, then what? 13, 15, 20, end of the day. And when we reopen this room tomorrow, and it's not the same link, it's for trading room guys, but when we start at 8 Central, we'll get obviously a lot would have happened overnight through the Pacific Rim, and a better signal as to the 7%. I suspect 7%, just like last Monday. They opened at -5, they went to -7, right? Then came off it. The guidance with the bonds, remember, has to work itself out because they rallied, and it was a rally to price in the 150 basis point cut to essentially bring the Fed funds to zero. The next cut is negative. I don't know what that entails. I'm not that macro expert. All I know is that QE essentially did that back in, that was the other kitchen sink. They did TARP, and then they had QE in November of 2008. So September and November, those 2 months, in that 2-month period, they had TARP, and then they had QE in that addressed a lot of concerns. And eventually, a few months later, they turned. That was a 50% correction, though. All right, Kenny, thank you. There's a lot of time for the what ifs and the critiques, I think, here's the plan. This is what people need to understand, is the plan is to go from that to this, or however that stunt curve goes. The other plan is, as we could participate, that whole notion of greed when it's fearful The reason why it's opportunistic is because it's hard. It's hard to be greedy when it's fearful. And I don't want people to be greedy, just opportunistic. Whereas there's movements for breakouts or there's opportunity for breakouts. You just can't be patient getting the hell out of a quick loser. You got, if you're anticipating a breakout, it's got to break out. If we're getting the turns or the headlines, which at this point was going to be the Fed that's come and gone, something that we don't know about that they could create, some sort of TARP or whatever, some sort of, and I don't think there's just that one moment where everything goes up and it's organized and okay, everything will be fine. But that turn in Italy or Spain or, hey, don't surprise yourself. Maybe a vaccine or, it's a miracle to have one in a year and a half, but stranger things have happened. Don't let yourself be surprised in any of this. Hey, Simplicity, Carl has a sister-in-law, been a nurse for 25 years. Wash your hands for at least 20 seconds. When you wash your hand, wait, let me read this whole thing so I know there's not a joke at the end of it. Oh, wash everything is essentially what he's saying. The simplicity of keeping yourself germ-free. And the less you're exposed, the more that this could be a blunted spread. I don't want to go over, nobody's asking, and I'm glad, but I don't want to go over levels that I think it could go to, stop and turn and all that stuff at this point. There's not enough structure. We'll blow through stuff like crazy. So I'd be very careful trying to qualify longer term levels. You got to let some more structure build and some ancillaries to start working, because that's going to be your biggest ally is an ancillary to help lead. Could be oil, could be another equity market, could be bonds opposite yen, but somewhere where you can anticipate a breakout anyways, and then a breakout below here, and then you get oil taking a dive, or the yen rallies, or the bonds are opposite and rallies, something to give you the ability to get a head start, and then you sell it and it goes, and you're able to play with the house's money. Till you have those ancillaries set up, it's tougher to get comfortable or to stay comfortable in a trade. Then you want those ancillaries to continue to work. So if you get short because the yen's rallying and you get some money into it and the yen continues to rally, it makes sense to stay comfortable. Carl says, don't forget your clothes. People forget to wash your clothes. They could stay unclosed. I'm not laughing at what you're saying, Carl. I'm just always waiting for the punchline. Don't touch your face, but don't get yourself in trouble. And my wife said, wash your hands and don't touch your face. I said, how about other people's faces? Can I touch those? She didn't think that was funny. So part of doing this was to give people a sense that I know, and you know me, I know doctor, and then we just know someone who knows, it's a little easier to hear stuff than just to read about it. So I'm going to keep this open, not through the night. I'm going to put a message on here. I'll check back in an hour or so, but people are kind of hunkered down. So you got some outlet to go to. For a couple days, I'll release the link to the room, but just for a day or two, to tomorrow and Tuesday, and we'll see what happens when there's some structure and maybe some correlation, because that's what we want. You're going to open up lock, and then we're all sitting here watching each other. That's exactly right. So someone had talked about levels being useless. It's all got to happen in real time. I mean, it's the breakout. That's what this market is. It's a momentum breakout market. And it's find the leader, find the lagger, and trade the hell out of it. I'm going to pop in another link for you guys to join the room if you're not a room member for tomorrow and maybe Tuesday. Give me a second. I got to find the link. Not every room member, don't use this link tomorrow. You guys already have the link.
And more comments. Best Powell on the asset purchases. Powell stating the Fed is going to buy securities at a quote strong rate. And looking at the
Fed's going to buy.
Futures still off from the highs, currently up about 1.9%. Also, Best Powell noting that language is open-ended and sending signals to the market. Powell is noting that the Fed is quote going in strong.
Powell says the Fed is going in strong starting tomorrow. The Fed will be going in strong starting tomorrow, Monday, across the curve.
T-bond futures up about 2%, trading just below the 180 handle.
I'll be back maybe in an hour or so. I'll put a message here. If you guys don't hang around, stay safe, be smart, and we'll see you in an hour or two. I might come in and sign off. We'll see where we're at. But 8 Central tomorrow, I popped the link in there. Dan, give me a second. I'll show you.
Side effects.